My parents and brother decided my hard-earned house belonged to him since he has kids. But when they tried to transfer the deed behind my back, I made sure the law crushed them. I'm Steven, 28M, and this is the story of how my own flesh and blood decided that my life, my hard work, and my home were somehow less valuable than my brother's. Simply because I don't have a wife and kids. For context, I grew up in a very traditional household. My parents worshipped the idea of family, marriage, children, and legacy above everything else. My older brother, David, 31M, was the golden child because he married young and had 2 kids by the time he was 27. To them, he was proof they had raised their son right. Me, I chose a different path. I focused on my career. I worked grueling hours, saved every penny, and by 27, I had bought my own house outright. It wasn't a mansion, but it was mine. No mortgage, no roommates, just a home built on my sacrifices. I was proud of it. But to my parents, it was wasted. Every family dinner came with some jab. All that space and no kids to fill it. Or, you should let David's family use your spare rooms, at least. I'd laugh it off, thinking it was just harmless commentary. I didn't realize how far they were willing to go. The real bomb dropped last spring. We were at Sunday dinner when my mom announced, as casually as if she were discussing the weather, "Mark, your father and I have been talking. We think it's only fair that David's family move into your house." I choked on my drink. "Excuse me?" Dad nodded like it was the most logical thing in the world. "David has responsibilities. A wife, kids, mouths to feed. You don't. You're single. You don't need all that space. It's selfish to keep it to yourself." David sat there silently, but the look on his face told me everything. He had already agreed. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They weren't asking, they were telling me. My own parents had decided my brother deserved my house more than I did. Why? Because in their eyes, my worth was tied to having a family. I didn't say much that night. I left early, my stomach in knots, my mind spinning. Part of me thought they were bluffing, that it was just one of their absurd family-first guilt trips. But I was wrong, because over the next few weeks, they made it very clear. They weren't asking. They were plotting. And I had no idea how far they would go to try and rip the one thing I had worked for right out of my hands. After that dinner, I hoped my parents would drop the ridiculous idea. But within days, the subtle suggestions turned into outright pressure. My mom called one morning with a syrupy tone. "Mark, sweetheart, you know David's kids need a backyard to play in. Don't you think it would be nice if they had yours? You'd still live there, of course. Maybe in the basement or something. The basement of my own house. Like a tenant in the home I had worked years to buy." I tried to brush it off at first, but then David chimed in. He sent me a text. "Hey, just wanted to talk about maybe helping us out with the house situation. You've got so much room, man. It only makes sense." When I didn't reply, the texts multiplied. Then the phone calls. Then family group chats filled with messages like, "Mark, think of the children," or "Family comes first." My aunt even called me selfish during a barbecue, parroting whatever version of events my parents had fed her. It was suffocating. Finally, I snapped and confronted them. I told them point blank that my house was not up for grabs, and that David could rent or buy his own like everyone else. That's when the guilt trips turned into something uglier. Mom said I was spiteful. Dad accused me of abandoning family values. David told me that since I didn't have a wife or kids, my needs weren't real responsibilities. But the worst part? They acted like they were entitled to it. Like my years of sacrifice, late nights, and hard-earned savings didn't matter because I didn't have a family of my own. I thought their campaign was just words, just pressure. But I underestimated them. Because one evening, when I came home from work, I noticed something strange. My back door was unlocked. At first, I thought I had been careless. But then I saw a stack of moving boxes in the garage, labeled in handwriting that wasn't mine. David's handwriting. That's when I realized. They weren't just trying to guilt me into giving him the house. They were already preparing to take it. Seeing those boxes in my garage lit a fire under me. I called David immediately. "Why are your moving boxes in my house?" He didn't even hesitate. "Oh, Mom and Dad said it'd be easier to start getting things ready. No big deal, we'll clear them out of the way when we move in." When we move in. Not if. I nearly dropped the phone. My own brother had already decided my home was his future address, and my parents were behind it. That week, things escalated. I came home to find David's wife, Lisa, in my driveway with their kids. She smiled awkwardly and said, The kids just wanted to see their new rooms. New rooms. As if my guest bedrooms had already been reassigned. One of the kids even ran inside and claimed the bigger room, shouting, "This one's mine." I stood there frozen, rage boiling. Lisa just shrugged. "They're excited. You'll get used to it." The audacity was staggering. The final straw came a few days later when I got home and found my parents in my kitchen. Not waiting outside. Not calling first. Inside. With a spare key I'd given them years ago, for emergencies. They were measuring walls. "Dad, what are you doing?" I demanded. "Just checking if David's furniture will fit. The sectional might be too big for this space." He said it like it was the most normal thing in the world. That's when I lost it. I told them all to get out, that this was my home and I wasn't giving it up. Mom actually rolled her eyes and said, "Mark, stop being dramatic. You'll understand once you have a real family." Real family. As if I didn't count. That night I changed the locks. It felt petty, but I couldn't take the risk of them just waltzing in whenever they pleased. Of course, that set off another round of group chat chaos. I was called paranoid, selfish, even anti-family. But for the first time, I drew a line in the sand. What I didn't know was that my family wasn't going to stop. They were about to escalate their scheme in a way that crossed from entitled into downright illegal. After I changed the locks, the tension in the family hit a boiling point. My parents stopped pretending to be reasonable and went straight into full-on war mode. 1 week later, I got a thick envelope in the mail. At first, I thought it was junk. But inside was a formal notice of family agreement, drawn up by some lawyer I'd never met. The document claimed my parents and brother had mutually decided that my house was to be reassigned to David's family for the greater good. It read like a bizarre parody, but it was stamped and signed. I later found out they'd hired a lawyer friend of my uncle, who apparently thought he could intimidate me into handing over my property. I brought it straight to my own attorney. She barely contained her laughter. "Mark, this isn't worth the paper it's printed on. They can't just vote you out of your own house. This is intimidation, nothing more." Still, I couldn't believe it. My own parents had taken the time to cook up fake paperwork just to bully me. When I refused, the guilt campaign turned nuclear. Extended family got involved. I was flooded with calls. Cousins, uncles, even my grandmother. All repeating the same script. "Be generous. David has a family. You don't. Don't be selfish." At a family gathering, my dad actually stood up during dinner and announced, "Mark is letting greed destroy this family. David deserves the house." The room went quiet, all eyes on me. I wanted to disappear. But here's the thing. The more they pushed, the stronger my resolve became. This house wasn't just walls and a roof. It was proof of years of sacrifices they never cared to acknowledge. Late nights, skipped vacations, side hustles. All of it so I could stand on my own 2 feet. And they thought they could just take it because I didn't fit their definition of family? I didn't budge. I told them loud and clear that I wasn't signing anything, that the house was mine, and that if they tried to trespass again, I'd call the police. The look on David's face that night said it all. He wasn't used to hearing no. He'd been the golden child his whole life. He expected doors to open for him, even when they weren't his. But something told me he wasn't done. My parents weren't done. And I was right, because soon after, I discovered they weren't just trying to guilt me into giving him the house. They were trying to steal it outright. A few weeks after the family dinner disaster, I came home to find a strange envelope taped to my front door. It wasn't from my parents this time. It was from the county clerk's office. Inside was a notice of property transfer inquiry. My stomach dropped. According to the document, someone had recently submitted a request to transfer the deed of my house into David's name. I felt sick. I immediately called the clerk's office, and sure enough, the request had been filed using my full name and a forged signature. Whoever did it even tried to make it look official by attaching a bogus family consent agreement. The name listed as the applicant, David. Couldn't believe it. My own brother had tried to legally steal my house using forged documents. I rushed to my lawyer, who didn't waste a second. She had the transfer flagged as fraudulent and filed a report. "This is forgery," she said. "This isn't just entitlement anymore. This is a crime." The next family dinner turned into a war zone. I walked in with the notice in my hand and slammed it on the table. "Which one of you thought this was a good idea?" Mom tried to feign innocence. Dad said I was overreacting. David finally broke, admitting he had filed the paperwork because it was only fair. His exact words, You don't even have a wife or kids, Mark. Why should you keep all this space when my family needs it more? I saw red. Because it's mine, David. Mine. I worked for it. I bought it. And you tried to steal it. The room went silent. For once, even my parents didn't have a comeback. But instead of apologizing, they doubled down. Dad muttered that I should be ashamed for calling family criminals. Mom said I was tearing the family apart. No, they had done that themselves. I walked out that night and told them all that if they ever tried something like that again, I'd let the police handle it. The line had been crossed, but the story wasn't over, because the police were about to get involved whether I liked it or not. After discovering the forged transfer attempt, my lawyer insisted we file a police report. I was hesitant. These were my parents and my brother. But the moment I signed the report, something inside me shifted. This wasn't family drama anymore. This was fraud. This was theft. The detective assigned to the case was professional but blunt. This happens more often than you'd think with families. We'll investigate. If your brother filed this, it could be criminal forgery. Days later, I got a call. The county clerk's office had turned over security footage. There was David, clear as day, walking into the office with paperwork in hand. No disguise, no hesitation. He even smiled at the clerk as he filed it. When the police contacted him, David panicked. He called me, voice shaking, and begged me to drop it. He said it was all a misunderstanding, that he didn't mean harm. But my lawyer warned me. If I backed down now, they'd only try again. Then my parents showed up at my door. My dad's face was stone cold. You don't call the cops on family, he said. My mom was crying, accusing me of destroying David's life over a piece of paper. I snapped. You tried to destroy my life by stealing my house. This isn't family anymore. This is theft. And if you keep pushing, you'll all go down with him. The look on their faces told me everything. They weren't sorry. They were angry because I hadn't rolled over. The fallout spread fast. Relatives started whispering. Some called me heartless for involving the police. Others quietly admitted they were glad someone finally stood up to David's entitlement. Apparently, this wasn't the first time he tried to use family to get what he wanted. Just the first time someone had stopped him. The police investigation moved slowly, but steadily. David was officially charged with attempted fraud and forgery. The case didn't go to trial yet, but the stain on his reputation was immediate. His employer found out. His friends found out. His perfect image as the family man cracked overnight. And me? I still had my house, but it no longer felt the same. Every time I walked in, I couldn't shake the thought that my own family had tried to rip it from me. And worse, I had a nagging feeling they weren't finished. Because people like my parents and David don't stop when they're caught. They just find new angles. Once David was officially charged, my parents switched tactics. If they couldn't get the house through intimidation or fraud, they'd try to take it by rewriting the story. Started small whispers at family gatherings. A cousin pulled me aside and asked, "Is it true you pressed charges on David just because he wanted to share the house?" That word, share, nearly made me laugh. Share? Forging my signature and filing paperwork behind my back wasn't sharing. Then came social media. My mom posted vague status updates about cold-hearted children forgetting the value of family. David's wife, Lisa, made it worse. She wrote a long rant claiming I had ruined her children's Christmas by refusing to help family in need. She painted me as a selfish bachelor hoarding space while her kids suffered. The comments poured in. Some relatives took their side, parroting the family first line. But others weren't so quick. Word of the police investigation had leaked, and people started asking uncomfortable questions. If it was just sharing, why was there a forged deed? Or, why did David go to the clerk's office pretending to be Mark? The cracks widened. I stayed silent. My lawyer advised me not to engage, not to feed the fire. And honestly, silence was more powerful than anything I could have said. Their posts began to look more and more unhinged without me to play the villain directly. But the real turning point came when one of David's so-called friends betrayed him. Screenshots landed in my inbox. Conversations where David admitted he deserved my house because Mark isn't even really an adult without a wife and kids. Those words burned. My own brother reducing me to less than just because I chose a different path. I forwarded the screenshots to my lawyer. She smiled grimly. This will help if they try to spin things further. And spin they did. My parents called me, screaming that I had destroyed the family name. My grandmother, who had been quiet until now, left me a voicemail whispering, "I'm proud of you for standing up. Don't let them bully you, honey." It was the first time I felt like I wasn't completely alone. But the smear campaign had one last act. And it was the most explosive yet, because my parents decided if guilt and lies didn't work, humiliation might. I should have trusted my instincts and skipped the family reunion that summer. But part of me still hoped things might cool down, that maybe we could sit at the same table without a war breaking out. I was wrong. The moment I walked into the rented hall, I felt eyes burning into me. Whispers followed me to the buffet line. My mom refused to meet my gaze, while David and Lisa hovered together, shooting me daggers. I almost turned around and left, but I didn't want to give them the satisfaction. Halfway through the evening, it happened. My dad stood up, clinked his glass, and announced he had something important to say about family values. My stomach dropped. He launched into a speech about selfishness destroying families, about how real men take care of their wives and children, and how others, his eyes locked on me, hoard blessings instead of sharing. Then he did the unthinkable. He pulled out a printed photo of my house and held it up like Exhibit A. "This house could be full of children's laughter," he declared. "But instead it sits half empty because Mark refuses to do what's right." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. I felt every pair of eyes drilling into me, waiting for my response. For a moment, I wanted to sink into the floor. But then I remembered the forged deed, the court documents, the screenshots, the late nights I'd spent building that home. Rage steadied me. I stood up. "You're right," I said loudly enough for the room to hear. "My house is half empty. But do you know what's even emptier? The morals of a family who tries to forge signatures and commit fraud just to steal from their own blood." The room went dead silent. I pulled my phone out and, without hesitation, opened the folder my lawyer had compiled. Screenshots of the fraudulent transfer, the police report, even David's own messages claiming he deserved my house. I held them up for anyone nearby to see. "This is what your golden child did. This is the truth." Whispers turned to shocked gasps. An aunt muttered, "Oh my God." Someone else said, "That's illegal." David's face went pale. Lisa dragged the kids toward the door. My parents looked like they'd swallowed glass. I didn't wait for their excuses. I put my plate down, walked out, and drove home to my house, still mine, always mine. The ambush had backfired. For once, the truth was louder than their lies. But the final blow, the one that would end their campaign forever, was still to come. A few weeks after the reunion ambush, the case against David finally landed in court. My lawyer told me to expect delays, excuses, maybe even some sympathy plays from his side. But what actually happened was swift and brutal. The judge reviewed the evidence, the forged documents, the county clerk's testimony, and the security footage of David strolling in like he owned the place. It was airtight. David's lawyer tried to argue that it was a family misunderstanding, blown out of proportion. The judge didn't buy a word of it. "This isn't a misunderstanding," the judge said flatly. "This is fraud, and fraud carries consequences." David was found guilty of attempted forgery and filing false documents. He avoided jail with a plea deal, but he was slapped with a massive fine, probation, and community service. His family man reputation was in ruins. His employer let him go within days, citing loss of trust. As for my parents, their credibility collapsed right alongside him. Word of the trial spread through the family like wildfire. All those aunts, uncles, and cousins who had scolded me suddenly went quiet. Some even apologized in hushed tones, embarrassed they had ever believed my parents' side of the story. At one point, my mom called me, sobbing, begging me to drop it, and help David get back on his feet. My dad tried anger, warning me I was destroying the family name, but their words no longer had any power over me, because for the first time it wasn't me on the defensive. It was them, their lies, their schemes, their entitlement, all exposed in the harsh light of a courtroom. When the gavel came down, I felt something I hadn't in months. Peace. The house was safe. My name was cleared. And David, the golden child who always got what he wanted, finally had to face a world where actions had consequences. But the best part? The true final twist was still waiting for Christmas, when Aunt Caroline's will would be read, and the last piece of justice would fall right into my lap. By December, life had finally quieted down. The court case was over, David was scrambling to rebuild his wrecked image, and my parents kept their distance. I thought the storm had passed, but life had one last twist waiting. That Christmas, the family gathered at my late Aunt Caroline's lawyer's office for the reading of her will. Caroline had been one of the only relatives who ever treated me with genuine respect. She never judged me for being single or childless. She admired my independence. As the lawyer read through her assets, I wasn't expecting much, maybe a few keepsakes. But then he cleared his throat and said, "And finally, to my nephew Mark, who has shown resilience and strength even when family tried to tear him down. I leave my lakeside cabin, in its entirety, free of debt and taxes." The room went silent. My parents stared in shock. David looked like he'd swallowed a brick. The lawyer continued, "I hope you enjoy it, Mark. You've earned it." I nearly laughed. My family had spent the better part of a year trying to steal my house because they thought I didn't deserve it. And now, by my aunt's hand, I owned not one, but 2 properties. My parents stormed out. David muttered something about unfair before Lisa dragged him away. I just sat there, stunned, clutching the keys. That night, I drove out to the cabin. Snow dusted the roof. The lake shimmered under the moonlight. And for the first time in months, I felt completely free. No guilt, no pressure, no entitled demands. Just me, a warm fire, and the knowledge that the universe had the last laugh. Because here's the truth. Family doesn't mean blood. Family means respect. And if they can't give you that, they don't deserve a place in your life. My brother lost his reputation. My parents lost their golden child pedestal. And me? I gained peace, independence, and a new home my entitled family could never touch. Sometimes the sweetest justice isn't revenge. It's simply winning by living well.